Yeah, 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 yeah. Started in the land down under Redbelly in the mix. Blockchain revolution, fixing all the tricks. Instagram only visionary in the game. Built a fork-proof chain, bringing the flame.
Welcome back, folks, to another Redbelly Insights episode. This is number 20. Can you believe we've had 20 amazing episodes with partners and the team? And this one, we've got a really special one because we are having two guests on as part of a project that is doing some amazing stuff, and you'll hear much more about in Redbelly News. But we've got Mike here from Bulla and Vinoj from Taram. How's it going?
Good, thanks.
Hi everyone.
Welcome, guys. Before we get into the details of the episode and intro, I do just have to say that this AMA is for informational purposes only. Redbelly Network is a blockchain infrastructure provider and does not endorse or promote any financial products or investment opportunities. All opinions expressed are those of the speakers. Please do your own research and comply with applicable laws in your jurisdiction. And now that we've gotten that out the way, as we do in finance, Mike, if you could give us a bit of an intro. You're wearing an interesting shirt. Where are you dialing in from?
Hi, Mark. It's great to be here. It's great to talk with Redbelly. I am wearing this shirt because I live in Florida, sunny Florida, Jupiter Beach, and I've it's the only kind of shirt you can buy around here, actually. My background, I started programming when I was a kid, pretty long time ago. I got a job on Wall Street as a quant because I could program. I made the transition to trading. I became a bond trader, a convertible bond trader, and then went to the buy side and managed money. So I started in software, managed money, and then 2009 happened, and I came back to software. Stuff I'd been writing had been credit related, and so that's what Bulla is all about. It's a credit protocol.
Fantastic. Glad to hear a quant out there doing some cool things in the blockchain world. There's a few of you we've met along the way. Over to you, Vinoj. Could you give us a bit of an intro about yourself and Taram?
Thank you, Mark. A pleasure being here. So about Taram, it's a one-stop platform for global cross-border traders. We help simplify things for cross-border traders, and we build out a pretty cool tool. And to be honest, I got into this space because in my previous company, which I co-founded with my co-founder and brother, who's in this company as well, we were doing a lot of global cross-border trade for our previous clients that included Amazon, SAP, Citrix, Accenture, PwC for office supplies and soft services here in Prague. And then we faced crazy number of issues. It was just quite surprising how this industry is functioning in decade-old technologies. And we were like, look, we have to change this. And that's how we set out to build this business. And now we're simplifying trade as much as possible and making it easy and accessible for anyone to be part of it.
Love to hear it, and I think it's amazing that both of you have looked at problems that are going on around the world, and how does blockchain help solve for that. Going back to you, Mike, if you were if you could describe a bit more about Bulla Network, like more of an elevator pitch, how would you describe that sort of thing?
Bulla Network is bringing working capital finance on chain. It's got two parts to it. The first part is a person or an SME or some entity mints a claim, so like an invoice or a purchase order. If you deliver product to somebody, you are extending them credit. I don't think people understand that, but that's what you're doing. So with Bulla, you can mint something like that, like an invoice or a purchase order. And then the second part of Bulla is a lending smart contract, not an SPV, not off chain. It's the contract, and what it does is that when it's set up, the underwriter part of that contract will recognize a creditor address and then offer to buy that claim at a haircut. And then the pool owns the claim. The person who sold it gets early money, and then the pool waits to realize the haircut.
Fantastic. And there's opportunities there, absolutely. And Vinju, you described how you started from logistics. What inspired you to bridge that world with finance and blockchain?
So one of the key issues in global cross-border trade, apart from logistics itself, is trade finance. So most of our clients really struggle with cash flow issues because the whole cash flow here is really screwed when they have to wait for the payments for about 120 days, if not more, typically, right? So people had a lot more potential to do more business in terms of manufacturing capacity. They were able to ramp up the capacity and do at least 3x of what they were doing at the moment, but they simply could not deliver because they just don't have the cash for the next cycle to ramp up the production. So that's when we realized, look, we'll start working with the traditional invoice factoring companies and other providers in the market, but that really didn't go well. It took us just a couple months to realize it was all not working out, and they were not really solving the trade finance issue and reducing the trade finance gap, which right now sits at $5 trillion, not because of bad credit profile of companies, but just inefficiencies in the process. That's when we realized we had to build something quickly and alternative. And that's how we came about building the solution with Bulla and Redbelly and tokenizing the invoice, thereby making the process really more transparent, not only for the clients, but also for investors to set up a pool. Because we at Taram, we give you a whole lot of data for the investor and the client as well. So for the investors, you could see historic data about the client. We show you, like, in the last 10 years, how much the client has actually traded and what they've traded and which trade lane. And then we give them a whole bunch of access to data, which makes it easy for them to underwrite certain clients.
Love to see it. And I think there's a lot of people that when they think of blockchain and the type of things that it can do, they, after looking at like the efficiency stuff around like invoices and escrows and things like that, they jump to, trade finance, because invoice factoring is certainly something that just lends itself to this technology. Now, jumping over to from paper to let's call it protocols, trade finance has been around for centuries. Letters of credit, bills of lading, manual reconciliation as we know it. Back to you, Mike. What's broken in that system today, and why do you see blockchain infrastructure as the right foundation to fix this? What are your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things are broken. The existing rails are pretty good, but they're old, and the cost of banking is pretty high because of the rails that exist. So you have a system that's at capacity at best. It's very opaque, as Vinju was saying. You can't see everything. It's because it's walled off. So the second problem, or the thing that's broken, is transparency. And the blockchain, if you think of the blockchain, is a source of truth for just how much Bitcoin you actually own, but also for how much credit you claim you have versus somebody else using Bulla. And everybody can see those claims. And back to what Vinju was saying as well, once the history on chain gets a bit longer, you'll be able to verify credit on chain or credit worthiness on chain. So back to the two problems, the current rails are inefficient and at their max. The new rails are much lower cost, much faster. And then there's transparency, which will bring price discovery as well. Remember, Vinju was saying, it seemed like even though they're solving these factoring problems, it's not the case that people are getting the best cost of capital to them for their credit worthiness.
Fantastic, and love to see it. That is certainly a great idea of use case for. Sorry, not a great idea. It's a great use case that you've built for using blockchain technology, and it really shows the strength of what it can do. I think not a lot of people, and I work a lot in the AI space, realize just how strong this sort of tech is, especially for security and being able to provide exactly what you said there. Back over to you, Vinju. From Taram's vantage point, what kind of pain points did exporters and even importers who you were working with kind of face that technology alone hasn't fixed until now?
Yeah, so the main issue the exporters and importers were facing is the transparency issue here. So typically they would approach the invoice factoring institute or the banks and they would apply for the credit. But each time they apply for a credit, these companies would do a hard credit pull request and get their credit history. And each time they get rejected, that affects the credit score. And they typically get rejected for no reason whatsoever, mostly because they don't fall into the ideal client profile these banks or invoice factoring companies or the insurance companies are looking for. So it's really the transparency issue here.
Fantastic. Mike, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I didn't want to add to the transparency issue, but the scale issue as well. Back to blockchains are very good at even small invoices and factoring those. So it's a scale, it's a transparency, it's a price discovery kind of issue.
Fantastic. And you're right there. I think blockchain tech is really interesting because there are things that are just, they only happen in the real world right now because they are in that Goldilocks zone. It's like you said, Vinju, it's on the concern list for the banks. If it's out of their concern list, they don't care. And so whether it's larger than that or much smaller, as you're alluding to there, Mike, like there are things that blockchain can really do, whether it's micro payments at the one end or large transactions without a huge cost at the other. Just going back to it, and people would be wondering, like, great, we've got the both of you on here. Can we just go back and just understand a little bit more about when you first started, let's say, designing this partnership? What were the inefficiencies that you wanted to eliminate there? You mentioned transparency. Were there other inefficiencies between yourselves, Vinju and Mike, that you wanted to target as part of this partnership?
Yeah, so in terms of inefficiencies, obviously transparency goes first, and the other one is the documentation here. It's super paper intense, and there's a high risk for double invoicing and high risk for invoice frauds here and such document related issues, which is really hard in a traditional manner of speaking to solve it. So that's something which is really crucial here to be solved. And imagine if you were to courier the title exchange document and assigning of invoice receivables to someone. That was all done in a paper-based document before, and now it need not be done thanks to what we built. So can you imagine the amount of time saved and also the amount of risk, the risk factor here in terms of eliminating the fraud here?
What about you, Mike?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say back to 2009. The reason I got back into programming, Solidity was later, was hypothecation and rehypothecation. If you're able to tokenize invoices and connect them with a hash or other ways with Taram, you don't want to give up too much information to everybody. There's public and private data, but if you can finally link these things and everybody can see them on a source of truth, it's pretty hard to rehypothecate. And it's pretty hard. It becomes harder, this whole fraud problem. And that was one thing I really wanted to eliminate because I was a victim of it a bit in 2009. And yeah.
Wow. So sorry to hear about suffering from the downside of the current system. And as you said there, Vinju, like manual paper based, it's like they get to go from that to going to blockchain. They get to skip the whole Excel and spreadsheet, and not even new Excel. I'm talking like Excel 2003 and the limitations of that kind of software. They get to skip all of that and just jump to blockchain. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's not only just Excel and spreadsheets. You're skipping real physical air careers as well. Because right now, a client sitting in, for example, Singapore and trading with someone in the US literally has to ship these documents across the globe.
That is crazy. I think a lot of people don't realize just how much of the world runs on inefficiency. So it's a no-brainer to move to this. This is a new era of invoice factoring, guys. Let's talk about how tokenized invoice factoring works, and how Bulla and Taram have developed production-ready pool financing real invoices on Redbelly. Vinju, starting off with you, the process starts with you guys. Let's call it that. Can you describe how you collect data and how you want to finance an invoice first?
So in terms of data here, so in terms of client side, we already, once the client is onboarded to Taram, we already have something called a deal tracker, wherein we have the whole order history of a certain client and their activity within our system. And by that means, we already see for a particular order, for example, one of our clients, he does about 100 containers from the Indian subcontinent to Middle East and Africa. So he in his system is able to see where his containers are physically at any given point of time. And we give literal crazy map view with data points where the ship is, when it's going to be loaded, when it's going to be offloaded, where it is it going to be delayed? And the data points are crazy here. And that is one kind of transparency which really helps the investor. And on top of it, we already have historic customs data on that client from various data points, various data sources, right? And so we've seen, okay, for the last 10 years, he's been moving so-and-so containers from here and there. And we already know it's a good client profile. And then we give that data along with a few financial data to our insurance underwriter for credit risk insurance. And they run that data and they underwrite the client. And once they underwrite, then we whitelist them for going into Bulla's pool here, the pool which Bulla manages for the investors. And then there, the invoice is tokenized, and then it gets funded based on the credit limit which was already provided and underwritten by the insurance provider. And all of this is visible in the investor dashboard. The investor gets to see how many companies are whitelisted, what kind of limits they were underwritten by the insurance provider. And if one invoice is funded after being whitelisted, then they can click on that invoice, and if the ship has already sailed, you could see where the ship is really. So there's no way you could provide more transparency than this, I believe.
It's interesting because data is the strength there. Data allows the different stakeholders to be able to be satisfied and lower their risk in many ways. And what better way to provide data than on blockchain? Now, Mike, over back to you. Once that process is started, it now gets over to you after Taram has worked through that workflow. When an invoice is created there, it's then tokenized in Bulla and settled on Redbelly. Can you walk us through what you see from your platform perspective, please?
What you see is, an invoice that is tokenized is an NFT. It has two very important elements. One, it would be the creditor address and the debtor address. So, and then all this data that Vinju is talking about can be linked to that NFT. So you're taking care of with that one token, the who, what, where, how much, and when, all in one, all on source of truth on the blockchain. So once you mint that, then all you really need to, and that's as simple as going to our dashboard and saying request. It's you're making a request against a debtor for money. That would be an invoice. You can also do the opposite. You can make a purchase order, which would be indenturing yourself. I don't want to get too complicated, but the idea is you just mint a token, you put it on a blockchain, everybody can see it, all the data that's important is attached to it. Now that you have that NFT, the pool is set up by the manager, and it whitelists. Right now it could do fancier stuff with AI, but it whitelists a creditor address, and it knows, okay, there's capacity for this guy to borrow up to $10,000 or $100,000. This invoice is for, let's say 25. The pool will pay you 24,000 for it right now. What do you want to do? And you can accept or reject. You don't necessarily even have to do it if you don't want to. All of this stuff, of course, on our dashboard, can be done in batch as well. So you could do a whole list of up to, right now, I think we have a small capacity constraint with batch. It's 30 at a time, 50. We're working on that. The pool itself has no limit, but just inputting them all slows things down a little bit. And then you can batch pay as well. And I wanted to say the beauty of doing this on a blockchain is what's called triple entry accounting. It's an old idea that people talked about before the blockchain really got as far as it did. But the idea is that, remember, I said that NFT has a creditor address and a debtor address. If I go to the dashboard and I inject my wallet address, if I'm the creditor, I have a receivable. If I'm the debtor, I have a payable. So your books are automatic, and you're looking at the same token, two different people. Context is all that determines it. So it's actually a pretty simple process. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say too was when the pool purchases this invoice, when you agree as a shipper, let's say, to sell your invoice, what happens? The creditor address that was original is replaced with that of the pool. So then when the debtor pays, he pays the pool. If you haven't switched it, of course, he pays the creditor address. So it's actually I'm oversimplifying it, but it's not that hard of an idea. A blockchain really makes things like this possible. It's very I think pretty profound, actually.
Tend to agree, and obviously, bias over here doing work with Redbelly, but I think when a lot of people see just how vast the difference is, and you've alluded to it there, going from manual and spreadsheets, Vinju and Mike, to the world that we can have, and not just like having something that's simplified and streamlined, but programmable. It's not just that it makes things more efficient than what we had before, but it also allows us to do things that we could never do before. And I think, the triple accounting, this is like the next gen of the double entry bookkeeping that we've had for so many years, from the Medicis to, being able to create new things like that. But just going over to, let's call it the transparency, trust, and the investor view. We talked about trust just then. Mike, you mentioned that. Vinju, over to you. Transparency matters to exporters and logistics providers, obviously. But what you mentioned some stuff about the data that they see and whatnot. But how does this reduce, say, disputes, delays, the issues that we currently have in that logistics area? How does this help?
In most of the cases, traditional freight forwarders are a bit tricky in terms of how they handle the goods and how they're transparent with things. Here, it's impossible for them to be tricky because of all the shipping data we already provide. We provide precise GPS locations, so it's hard for the actual shipping agent to come and bluff and be like, look, honestly, there is some delay with the vessel that isn't reaching there, which they always do say something, and they just delay the process. And more often than not, it's just simple human errors or negligence which led to such an issue, wherein the client ends up paying crazy amount of money in damages and detention at the ports. And the clients are usually lost in gray area because they don't know what's really happening. They have to rely on the data from the freight forwarder. That's just sending some email, and you just go like, okay, I guess I have to believe him. Right now, it's not the case. When they see actually where the vessel is, and if the forwarder is telling you something else, then you call the bluff immediately and you stop all the nonsense immediately, and you save a lot of time and money in the process.
I like it. And, for a lot of people that might be watching, if you remember the movie Tenet, they were doing some of those fight scenes within a free port. So, you actually get to see what a free port looks like over there. Although hopefully nothing crazy like that happens in the ones that you guys are working with. Now, back to you, Mike. You've highlighted in conversations that we've had, let's call it invoice level visibility as this key kind of breakthrough. Why do you think that matters to stakeholders? And how does it change the risk profile or cost of capital for those stakeholders?
Well, let's go back to why I call it Bulla. Bulla, it means signature. Bulla used to be a stamp in ancient Sumeria. You went to a market, you saw a couple of sample sheep, you said, I want 10 of those. The scribe would say, okay, bought 10. He'd put a stamp, you would go to the farm and pick it up. A stamp signature, that's what blockchains are all about. And in particular, Bulla is more, I would say, I don't want to say, bottom up. It's origination of credit. So you, using Bulla, you can originate your own credit. You don't have to go to a bank. You don't have to go to anybody else. It's your signature. And that starts the whole process. And whatever your signature, if you are a truthful person, your signature will have more value than if you're not. And that's just the way of the world, really. The same would apply for an SME, that a multi-sig that's signing credit claims against another party. If that multi-sig address is making a bunch of fake claims, people are going to know. And you'll know on Bulla as well. So that's, I think, what people underestimate. If you talk a lot about RWA, I always hear, well, we're going to tokenize a big, like a real estate building. Who gave you the right to do that? First of all, right? Okay, well, you probably get the right because you're going to trade it. So if you're a big, investment bank, that's the model. We issue securities and we're there to trade it. And so that gives us the right to issue something. But with an invoice where I shipped some, onions from Idaho to New York, I get to sign it. That's my business. And I claim that that's what I did. And I have a BOL that's tokenized. And then I have an invoice that I minted with my signature. So it's very bottom up origination oriented with Bulla.
Fantastic.
And that brings legitimacy.
Absolutely. Whether it's onions going to New York or something else, I think being able to do that yourself. And the technology is what changes. It's still the same ideas like we've had since ancient Sumeria, which is really interesting, right? For the historical buffs there. Let's get over to the real world layer and back to you, Vinju. Taram connects with users through, let's call it simple channels like web and WhatsApp. It goes to where they are, which is great, rather than trying to get people to, hey, come on this new platform, learn how to do this. We're changing the way we're doing things. No, we're actually coming to you. So you make life easier. It's a far cry from a lot of DeFi dashboards, let me just say. What have you learned about designing blockchain-backed systems that don't feel like blockchain to end users, which is such an interesting but necessary concept?
So early on, when we started the conversation with Mike and also Redbelly, we were really particular to take any fancy words out of the equation when we present it to clients, and the client shouldn't be able to see any complicated words or system in place. And that started off much early, even before we got into this building into invoice factoring, tokenized invoice factoring. Even for our systems, I made it very clear to my CDO and my entire team, guys, keep it simple and super dumb. Don't try to force people to use new systems, right? Then this is what we keep trying to do all the time. Don't try to force anyone into new system. Build something around what they already use. Because there's a lot of vendors in this industry, and it's impossible to reach the masses by trying to force everyone to onboard into Taram. So we build a system wherein we don't have to onboard anyone. Are they using WhatsApp? Yep. Then talk to our WhatsApp AI agent. You're just using email, just communicate by email. But on the other end, it's not our people communicating by the email, but it's our AI agent talking to them by email, and pulls that data back into our system, and it gives it to our client in the dashboard. So we make it really simple and dumb, long story short. And the same principle we applied here. We don't want to tell people, hey, just hold BTC, USDT, and whatnot, right? Trust me, someone who's exporting frozen chicken out of Asia, family business, they're doing a lot of volume, but they don't care about holding cold wallet, hard wallet. No, it's too complicated for them. So we just build a system wherein it's super simple, easy, and nothing fancy.
Fantastic to hear. And simple and dumb is really should be the key word. In ancient Sumeria, Mike, back over to you. Like, they probably thought that the stamp was way. Oh, you're making it too simple and dumb. We're streamlining it too much, which is really funny. But just back over to your side, how do you integrate those front end actions that Taram is doing with Bulla's, let's call it the liquidity layer, and ensuring data integrity from that moment an invoice is created?
Well, Bulla is deep infrastructure, and it's hard not to talk about or some big words. But again, what I keep telling people is that not all things belong on the blockchain. Some things do. Some things are very well suited to the blockchain. So Bulla is looking to be a plugin to great systems that have built super ERP stacks, logistics like Taram. We're just that little piece that lets them optimize on the finance part way more than what the traditional rails are offering. So typically we have I think a pretty good front end, but you got to be a little bit crypto savvy to use it. So it's better to integrate with people like Taram. We're integrated with another company called TCS, where it's just an ERP that generates invoices and then they send them out. It's like a kind of tokenization as a service sort of thing. And we're just the infrastructure. One fine day, I'm hoping more people, and when I talk to my daughter who's 16, they accept prima facie Web3. So they could be using Bulla on its own just from the dashboard. But there is, back to traditional people or people selling frozen chicken, as Vinoj says, there's massive inertia, and there's a lot of legacy software that has been written that hasn't been completely, depreciated either. It's pretty good software. So what are we doing? We're adding that extra element to bring the cost down, to make things a little more efficient, and to increase the margins, maybe.
I don't think it'll just be a maybe. I think it'll be a definitely yes when people adopt this kind of stuff. So that's my endorsement there. But let's go back to and bring it back to the Redbelly kind of part of the conversation and equation. They've been building, accountable open capital market infrastructure for RWAs and institutional finance. But for both of you, maybe Vinoj, you might want to start with this. But what was the reasoning behind choosing to work with Redbelly for your projects? What's your perspective on that?
For us, it was plain, simple, and straightforward. We wanted to work with someone who's RWA focused and who has a lot of expertise in this segment. And we didn't want to go to any no-name blockchain. There's plenty of blockchain protocols available there. And someone who's kind of an expert in RWA space and who could work with the same vision in mind. That was it.
Perfect. And over to you, Mike. What's your perspective?
They have native to their blockchain the idea of KYC, KYB. They're an L1, so they're proof of work. I'm kind of, sometimes proof of stake. I'm not so, where I line up on that, but they can do a lot of transactions on their L1. And if this does scale, and I think it will, Redbelly is very well suited for that. And the last element was Redbelly right now doesn't have enough native stable tokens, but I've been beating up the people there. I'm also hoping an Australian stable token might come out on Redbelly. That would be huge, because then you can start to build little pools. You can use Bulla integrated with other software vendors and really increase the TVL and et cetera on Redbelly.
Fantastic. There are those projects that are part of something that the central bank is doing right now, and there are different tests being done there. And one of those is a stablecoin, an Australian dollar-backed stablecoin, and they're doing stuff with Redbelly. So great segue, great little plug there. So thanks for that, Mike. Going back to the what you guys are doing, let's talk about efficiency, compliance, scaling. We've mentioned these throughout, but just going a bit more, diving down into it. You both built something that's faster, cheaper, fully transparent, but also let's call it compliant. How do you manage identity, licensing, jurisdictional rules without adding friction? And you mentioned some friction there, Vinju, with the discussions that you had internally to make sure that you build tech that goes straight to the folks. But just going back to that question, how do you, from your side, Taram, manage identity, licensing, jurisdictional rules?
So we again try to keep it simple with regulators. That is the motto with anyone, regulators, partners, and everyone, right? So before we go into any geography and any zone where we're regulated, we don't build a system and then try to be regulated. We look for what is needed for the regulators and work in tandem. So in most cases, we are way ahead of the regulation. So we keep it simple. That stays us out of trouble, and also the clients as well.
That's a great answer. What about from your perspective, Mike?
Well, and I already mentioned that native. I don't know if people know what that means, but built into Redbelly is anybody on Redbelly who has a wallet has already complied with a regulator at least, and you will know on Redbelly what kind of wallet that is. Is it an accredited investor, or is it a retail person? Is it so given that information, you can then offer whatever investment opportunities or pools that are proper to that person. I'm also a big Bulla itself, though, is agnostic and the idea is I push things out to the jurisdiction. So I believe that if you are an honest person, you should know what jurisdiction you're in. You should know more about what your regulatory requirements are, or if you don't, I can find out from somebody in that jurisdiction. But it's more you have to comply than me writing a bunch of code to comply with the world. That would be too difficult. And I think that's why Vinju says, we don't build something and then try to make it fit to all the regs. It's more like, okay, where are you? What kind of regs do you suffer under? And then how can we connect you to better finance?
Death and taxes are those two truths to life. Regs, I would put regs or taxes under regs. So, technically it is one of those things that we suffer through, but it's necessary suffering. Suffering is life. I don't know. Feeling very Nietzsche today, but I don't know if you said that. Let's go over to the next part of this area. But back over to you, Vinju. What needs to happen to scale this? More pools, more asset types, new geographies? What does scale look like?
So I keep telling Mike at Bulla and our other partners here, the demand from the client side is out of question here. There's huge demand. So in terms of scaling to clients, there's no issue here at all. In terms of what is needed to scale this initiative, if you may call it, is the larger pools set up here. So, and fortunately, we are seeing pretty good interest already. even in this stage of time. So there's already pretty huge private equity, private credit funds that are in talks with us and that would like to be part of this initiative because they see the upside clearly. But again, is 100 million good enough? Not really. Is 200 million good enough? Not really, because the demand is really huge. We're talking about the gap is already extended to beyond $5 trillion. So you can just imagine.
Absolutely. There's a lot of big figures there. And I think if anything is going to be able to capture that well, it's not going to be legacy systems and like new ideas built on old tech. It's going to be new ideas or even existing ideas that just can't happen today because we are working on legacy tech. So I do believe, that the blockchain, and especially that you guys are doing some of that AI stuff, and we'll have to get a future episode to dive into that because that's definitely right in my wheelhouse. Would love to see what you guys are doing there. But back over to you, Mike, and let's get to another part. But as we look at that scale question, what are your thoughts on that? What needs to happen from your side to be able to see that scale?
Yeah. The biggest hurdle to scale is vaults and custody. If you're talking $200 million, you don't want to be running a pool with a multi-sig and 3 signers, right? You want some robust custody. And what I'm seeing are a bunch of companies that offer custody, and what they're doing is they're building things called vaults. And then in that vault, you can send fiat. You don't even have to have crypto. You want exposure to the crypto returns, but you send fiat, and then the manager of that vault converts it, and then that manager will deploy it to different pools. And when a manager does that, they have all the tokens. They're not sending you tokens to some random, wallet that could get lost. So I think that's where a lot of work needs to happen, and I'm talking to a lot of people about that, is custody. And once we have a really good or several good custody solutions, then they're all going to be looking for product like the Taram Bulla pool or like other pools that exist.
Fantastic. You highlight like a really key point there, and I think a lot of people don't realize just how much custody is important, and there's interesting players in that space, but certainly an opportunity. Let's get over to the broader impact as we round out the podcast. But Vinju, how does faster invoice settlements ripple through the logistics chain for shipping agents, insurers, customs brokers? What are your thoughts on that?
So it's just self-explanatory. Faster you get the money paid out, the more business you could do. It makes it easy for the whole ecosystem to function more efficiently and to do more business. As simple as that.
I love it. It's one of those things where they probably unlock a lot more possibilities of what they could do. Like in business, there's always like the risk reduction, cost reduction, and revenue increase. Imagine you could hit all 3 with a piece of technology. What you guys are providing there, I think is going to be fantastic. What are your thoughts on that, Mike? Actually, let's go over to thinking about how this model opens the door for SMEs. They make up 90% of global business, yet they face rejection rates of up to 40% from some accounts for trade finance. How does the model that you guys are working on together open the door for them?
I'll start. The traditional banking has a cost, and that's why 40% of SMEs can't get access, because traditional banking has a base cost, and then it has a scalability problem. So what this model unlocks is that you can bank almost anybody using Bulla, because all you need in away from custody and what I just said, let's say all you need is a wallet and internet connection, and you can start minting invoices for set on Redbelly. It's awfully cheap, and then you can finance those subject to you finding a pool like Taram. So the cost of doing business or banking, the cost of banking is lowered by this model, and it's also scaled. The other thing that fast settlement does is, where is the money? The money is in a pool. You can see it, or you can see it in the vault. There's no mystery. The problem with banks, and I don't want to beat up banks because our standard of living has gotten this far because of banking. So I'm not anti-banker. It's just right now it's opaque. The bank doesn't really know how much money they actually have at the bank at any given time. A pool does. And so a pool can settle in block time because of that. So scale, lower cost, and instant, block time settlement.
Fantastic. I think a lot of people confuse critiques as being anti something. That's certainly not the case.
Yeah.
We can always improve. And it's quite interesting in the blockchain space because people are so fervent with their beliefs. It's either black or white, but guys, that the world is gray and we're navigating through
the world is gray, right? The world is gray.
Rounding out, just how do people learn more about Taram and Bulla? Let's go to Vinju. Like, what's the best ways for folks to get in touch with you if they want to work with you or if they want to learn more? Where do you send people?
Well, it depends. If it's the clients, they could go straight to the website and somebody from our team will reach out to them and help them out. And if it's investors, they could reach out to me or any of my team on LinkedIn or through email, and we'll happily talk to them. It's pretty simple.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll edit that out. Fantastic, Vinju. We'll put those in the show notes and links and details there and through the socials. But Mike, over to you. How do people best get in touch?
Yeah, again, LinkedIn is a great way. Mike Revy or Michael Revy. I think I'm not sure actually. Michael Revy, and then Twitter at Revy_Michael. Or you can go to our website. There's a button. You can book a demo, and that just opens a Calendly. It kind of depends, like Vinju was saying, if you're an investor and you're looking for yield, or you want to understand more about the Bulla protocol and how it works and how it might benefit you as a business. You can also set up a demo. We can show you how it works. And if you're a software vendor who wants to start to use Web3, I'm interested in business development.
Fantastic. There's a lot of different avenues there, and it's great that you both provide those different ways in because I can see a lot of this kind of stuff growing. But for now, thank you so much both for your time. We look forward to doing more business with you guys and for seeing the Redbelly network be able to get involved and contribute. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting us.
Yo. Yo. Redbelly insights, yeah, the Partax flow. Expert guest knowledge, watch the wisdom grow. Open markets, that's the motto, loud and clear. Trap fire, mystify, banish all the fear. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap. Future in his bite, Redbelly network shining never so bright. Yo, centralized chains, now we ain't playing that game. Decentralized dreams, shouting out the name. Partners on deck, stories they unveil. No more closed doors, just a financial trail. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap. Future in his bite, Redbelly network shining never so bright. Yo, screens gleaming, vision so keen, capital flowing. A brand new scene from the outback whispers to the global stage. Redbelly's turned in a brand new page. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap. Future in his bite, Redbelly network shining never so bright. Yeah.